Last time we started construction on our guard barracks and got this far. Today we're going to finish things out by adding in the turrets, some walkways, and some railings, as well as the paint job. So let's go ahead and get started by building those guard turrets. So I'm going to start things out making a foundation and a walkway platform out of some foam here, and this is another one of these little hexagon stencils that I found at Michael's. And when I say I'm going to make a turret, think of it kind of like a small tower that goes either on a wall or on a building. I guess you could call it a tower, but I'm going to stick with calling it a turret because that's technically what it is. So a lot of this process is going to be very similar to when I made the guard towers for the city walls a couple episodes ago. We're going to take a couple of these hexagons and then we're going to cut out some sections of wall that are going to be attached to them and attached to a Pringles can that's going to make up the center of the turret. Now each of these pieces of wall are approximately 2 inches wide. And then using my mat here as a guide, I mark out a simple set of repeating lines that are going to be our bricks. Trim off the end and then use the hobby knife on its shortest setting to very shallowly scour lines across the foam. Now this goes maybe a third or at most halfway into the foam. And then it's scribing a few horizontal lines going through the foam to create the brick pattern. Exaggerate the lines with a pencil. And then texture it with a harsh texture plate and some tin foil before re-exaggerating the lines so that all of the brick pattern is still perfectly visible. Alright, so now I'm going to take a bunch of coffee stirrer sticks and trace out on them a simple hexagon using one of the foam pieces that I cut earlier, and this is going to be the walk platform on top of the turret. And all I'm going to do is clip them and do that same kind of repeating pattern of one piece that goes across the entire walkway and then one that is cut in half just to kind of give the appearance of some simple wooden planks. And then once everything is cut, I can just start hot gluing them into place. Alright, so now that that's done, we can start assembling our turret. So I'm going to start by attaching a hexagon to the base, and then applying a little bit of hot glue to the bottom and the center of the little foam wall sections. I carefully attach them all into position. Now, just like with the tower video, the edges and corner sections of the turret are a little bit spongy because there's nothing to support them and nothing behind them. So I'm going to, off camera, insert a chopstick into those sections just to give them a little bit of reinforcement. It won't be noticeable on the finished product, and I can just kind of quickly glue them into place at the top and not worry about them. Alright, so now using some cut chopsticks, I'm going to create some simple little wooden log walls, and these are going to be 5 chopsticks high, which comes out to about 1.25 inches. And these are going to be the kind of guard post walls on the top of the turret. And same as in the tower video, I'm doing a simple alternating pattern of a pointed log and then a non-pointed log, and these are just going to be repeated throughout the entirety of the sections of the guard post. Alright, so once I've got enough of those put together, I made a couple of small half sections, and those are going to be along the back where we can have our access point. And then it's a really simple matter to hot glue these into place at the bottom and just kind of interlock them together. Now, I was a little too forceful with one of them and it broke apart, so just a quick little bit of hot glue to put it back together. Alright, so now that the walls are in place, I need to add a little bit of reinforcement, so I'm taking a round barbecue skewer, cutting them to length, and then applying a little bit of hot glue and tacking it into place. This will help reinforce all of the corners of the build and make sure that nothing comes apart during gameplay. Alright, so this is what we've got so far. On the back section I made these two panels. Now the lower section I didn't mark or texture because those aren't going to be seen at all. And our little turret emplacement is going to be at the top. And just like in the tower video, we're going to disguise all of the seams at a later date. But this is going to be a section that's going to have a little walkway or staircase leading down into it. So now I can take some Mod Podge and black paint and seal all of the foam, just to make sure that we have a nice, solid, and rigid surface to work with. And this will also help to prevent any wear and tear damage from handling during gameplay or things getting knocked into or bumping into it. Alright, so now that that's done, we can go ahead and finish out our walls and the roof. So I left a section for some windows, but all of the sides have this little bit of extra space that wasn't really covered, so I'm just going to very quickly add in a few little cut sections of chopstick to be a few more logs, just kind of going up the side of the wall to give the impression of a little bit more reinforced log walls. Now, because there's nothing behind them on half of the log, I do, off camera, apply a little bit of hot glue to the back of them, just to kind of help hold them in place and make sure that they are solidly held. Alright, so now for the roof shingles. I learned a lot from the past projects and the mistakes that I made on those. And putting together the shingles for this little gable section ended up being a lot easier once I kind of knew the process. For the main roof, it's just a simple repeating alternating pattern with progressively larger strips of the shingles that are just kind of interlaced on top of each other. And once I had that up to a certain height, I began very carefully inserting the shingles into the gable, and this is going to help disguise the edges and just be a nice little addition to the whole project. Now, I'm not going to do shingles across the top of this. I actually want to take a piece of barbecue skewer and place it on top of everything just to kind of give a little bit more of a reinforced look. And clear away a little bit of this extra hot glue. And then I can pretty quickly attach the rest of the shingles and finish out the roof. And since I cut a whole bunch of these shingles ahead of time, it really is just a simple matter of line it up, remove any shingles that I'm not going to use on that strip, glue it into place, and then move on. Alright, so now I think it's time for the walkways and the railings. So we're going to have the turret fit into the corner sections of the building, with these flat sections facing in so that they aren't seen. And what we're going to end up doing is, once the little guard post here gets attached on top, we need to have a little walkway go over to the, raise the camera up here a little bit, there we go, from the roof over to the emplacement. And I rigged up one of these, and it's just a simple little staircase that goes from the roof to the little turret, and I think it's going to work out just fine. So let me show you real quick how I put this together. So I started with a craft stick that is about 1 inch wide and cut it to 2 lengths that are 1.5 inches long. Then I hot glued them together and used a scrap piece to add a little bit of extra reinforcement. So the reinforced section is going to be the underside and the flat section is going to be the top. Then I mark a couple of spaces that are just a hair bit in on one side, and using a straight edge I very carefully carve away a bit of the wood to make a little bit of a trapezoid shape. Now using some coffee stirrer sticks, I cut them to size, and using a little bit of hot glue, I attach a match stick to the bottom of it. Now the match stick is going to be the front of the stair step, and you see here I'm just very carefully trimming away a little bit to make it a little bit more flush when I glue it into place. So this is going to kind of create a downward angle, but the step is going to remain level once everything gets glued into place. Now once I have the first one, I can just kind of repeat the process with another coffee stick and another match, trim the bottom edge to make it a little bit angled, and then glue it into place with a little bit more hot glue. And if any of the glue kind of seeps out, I make sure to clear it away. Now each of these little walkways ends up being like 5 steps, and it's not going to let you sit a model on it. As you can see, they're pretty shallow stairs, but I think they look really nice. Now, we do have some rough edges on the sides, and I need those to be perfectly flush in order to attach the railings, so I use a little bit of sandpaper to just quickly take care of the edges, clean them up a little bit, and make them nice and flush. And as you can see, it doesn't take a whole lot of passes. Alright, so to make the railings, we're going to take 2 little popsicle sticks, and I'm going to cut it straight down the middle and then cut each section at 1 inch, and that's going to be all of the supports for the railing. And then for the bottom that's going to attach to the stairs, I cut 2 pieces out of another stick that have some roughly like 45-degree angles on them, or maybe a little less than 45. So at the top of all the supports, I nipped off a section, and at the bottom of half of them, I cut a piece off, and you'll see why I'm doing that in just a second, but I'm going to sandwich one of these smaller pieces with one of the full-length pieces, and clean away any hot glue that kind of seeped out. And what we're left with is a few of these. Now we have a space at the bottom, and I need to trim the top of this to make it flat but you kind of see what we're going with. So now I'm going to take the bottom of the railings and attach them into place on both sides. But these are going to, the railing supports are going to attach like so, and you can see how that little kind of notch holds everything together. And this is going to make it a lot more supported and a lot more sturdy as it gets put together. Alright, so that's the first side done. Now I can attach the other side. Again, cleaning off any hot glue that seeps out. Attach my railing supports. Alright, and now it's time to measure out our railings. A little bit of cleanup here first. Got to make sure it's all flat, otherwise the railings will be not quite sturdy and a little bit off-centered. So using a flat barbecue skewer, I just quickly mark out the length and trim the edges and do a little bit of a bevel on the front and back sides before attaching it with a little bit of hot glue to the top. And then repeat the same process on the other side. Now, off camera, I made a few other railings that are just kind of straight sections for the top of the roof using this same method. But since it's the same method, I decided not to film it. Alright, so now that that's done, it's time to get painting. Okay, so I started off by doing a base coat of Artist Loft Gray on all of the turret sections, and I did a very quick double coat, just doing diagonal one direction, then loading up the brush again, flipping another direction, and just having at it. Now I want to kind of keep the dark recessed areas to kind of give the impression of some dark grout lines, and it's pretty easy to fill that in if you're using a little bit too much of the paint. So I'm being a little bit sparing and just kind of going pretty light with the strokes. Alright, once that's dried, I did a simple dry brush, kind of a little bit more like an overbrush using some neutral gray. This seems like it's a little heavy-handed, but it'll dry a little bit more dull, and we're going to do another dry brush on top of this, so I'm not super worried about it. But I did want it to be kind of the same color scheme as the walls and towers that I had built, just to kind of give the impression that the same city built both of these things. Alright, so now to soften the brightness just a little bit, I'm doing a downward facing dry brush of some Master's Touch Warm Gray. This is just going to soften some of the sharp edges and give it a little bit more of a warm and weathered appearance. Alright, so now we can do a raw sienna brushing over all of the wood sections of the guard emplacement, starting with the inside. Now I start with the inside because it lets me kind of hold on to the outside as I'm doing it. Then I move to the outside, and it kind of works out because then I can kind of reach over and hold on to the floor section as I'm painting that, and I'm not constantly having to touch up the paint because, my fingers have brushed stuff away. And then I can set it flat and paint the floorboards. And And once that was dry, I took some more of the warm gray and did a dry brushing over all of the interior and exterior of the piece. This will give it that nice kind of weathered and aged processed wood look that I've really started to enjoy in all my projects. And you can see it just kind of really adds a lot of life to the piece and kind of draws out some of the sharp and raised edges in the wood. Alright, so now for the main building, we're going to do a whole lot of the same stuff. So I'm just going to start with the Artist Loft Gray on all of the stone sections. And you can see I'm being a little bit quick with this. I'm getting some on the logs. I wiped some of it away in areas where I think it might be a little bit too much, but I'm not overly concerned about it. The raw sienna kind of covers up just about everything it touches. And speaking of that raw sienna, here we go with a simple kind of overbrush over all of the logs on the main building. Now, I'm doing the raw sienna on anything that I want to give the impression that it is supposed to be wood. So I'm taking some extra time to focus on areas that might not be seen, but if they are seen, they are hopefully going to be interpreted as wood and just kind of blend in with the logs. Now using some warm gray, I add the weathering effect for all of the wood sections. And again, if this looks a little bit too bright on camera, it will tone down as it dries and be a lot less visible. But there are a few sections where I put it on a little bit too heavy and just kind of wipe it off with my fingers. Now going back to some neutral gray, I do that dry brush over all of the stone sections. And then once that has had a chance to dry, I grab the warm gray and do that downward facing dry brush to help tie everything together. Alright, so now that that's done, we can start assembling everything together and finish out the roof. So, starting with the windows, I'm just going to do a little bit of hot glue and then press them into place. Now, if you do this, definitely pre-fit the windows and make sure that they're going to fit nice and snug before you hot glue everything. That way you don't have to stop and then trim anything as you're placing them into position. Now for the turrets, I'm going to take some skewers that I painted off camera and wedge them in with some hot glue to cover all of the seams on the corners of the turret. This adds a lot of nice, unique characteristics to the build and really helps to disguise the lines of the foam. Now I'm only going to do these skewers on the front three because the back section is going to be mostly hidden by the rest of the build. And now with a little bit of hot glue, I can attach the guard post to the top. And any areas where I think there's a gap, I'll just do a little bit of hot glue to fill those areas. Okay, so while those are being done, I can finish out the roof section by doing a coating of some deep red on all of the shingles. I want this building to really stand out in comparison to the others that I've done that have that kind of green roof. I want this to really be a stark contrast so that players would know that this is not a normal building and it can be seen as a barracks or like a small, fortress inside of a city or things like that. Now that the roof is dry, we can attach the turrets to the walls, and this is going to be a little bit of hot glue down at the base. But it's also going to be held in position by the walkway here, which is going to be glued on all 4 sides down onto the roof section as well as the turret, and it really kind of holds everything together nicely. But we can also reinforce all of our edges with a little bit more hot glue just to kind of tie everything together. And one more of the strips will help to hide the seams. Alright, and now here is one of the straight railings that I put together off camera, and that's just a simple line of hot glue down the side, and it just tacks right into place. Alright, with all that done, we can do a dry brush of some neutral gray on all of the roof shingles. This will give it a nice, unique appearance and kind of make it look like an old, aged, almost terracotta roof section. Alright, and there we go. Episode 12 is finished. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe this thing took this long to make, but this is definitely the largest build that I have put together for a single couple of videos. This thing is huge. It's like a foot across in 3 different directions. Surprisingly light given the materials that were used though, so that's nice. This is definitely going to take a prominent position in our city build. So thank you everyone for watching, hope it was worth the wait. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in the comment section, and we will see everyone next episode.